Are you looking at hiring an injector? Or maybe you lost a good injector to the competition. Maybe they went out on their own and you really are wondering, like, did I get the compensation right? What should I be paying an injector? So today I'm really excited to be sharing with you a framework to create a compensation plan that is truly a win-win for both the injector in your business that will help you to not only attract and retain that top talent, but also to make sure that your business is profitable. You're growing, and that's that win-win that I am describing, right? Because oftentimes what I see is that a practice is either paying way too much to an injector because they don't know their numbers, because they are just going off of what the injector is demanding, right? And they're not profitable at the end of the day. And that is not a sustainable, business strategy. Or they're not paying the injector enough. And then they wonder why they have this revolving door of injectors, right? They're not compensating them on what their, credentials, licensing, experience, revenue production that they bring to the table, what your local market is paying other injectors. And so you lose them, and so today I want to talk about how you can create a compensation plan that is going to help you to attract, retain, and become profitable in your injectable department. So there's lots of different ways to step in this, and there is certainly not a one size fit all way of determining compensation. Whether that's in your state, and certainly in your local market, right? If you're just starting out and looking to, add injectables, a very common general approach starts with a compensation to revenue ratio, which on average is about 20%, give or take, right? I've seen it 18, I've seen it 22, maybe 25, right? But it's plus or minus because it's based on, again, licensing, potentially additional responsibilities that you're asking of them. So just as a steadfast example is if they're generating you $50,000 in revenue, their pay, for example, would be $10,000 if you're sticking with that 20% compensation to revenue general ratio. If they're generating you $25,000 in revenue, the pay would be $5,000. Now, again, this is not a straightforward way of going about it because when you, let's say, the first year of this injector, right, it's going to take time to build their book of business. And so it's likely going to cost you more than that average ratio, right? So let's keep in mind other variables that are going to come into play as you are creating this compensation plan. For example, demand in your marketplace. Oh my gosh, I talked to some people in some major markets in Florida, particularly, and the demand and competitiveness is so high, you wouldn't believe what they're paying their injectors there, right? And so you have to really take into consideration a number of variables in order to create your compensation plan. So let me share with you some very common compensation models that we are seeing out there in the market and helping clients with. So most will do an hourly, but you want to look at your state labor laws when it comes to deciding if it's in your best interest to do an hourly or a salary pay, right? So you really want to first check in what your state labor laws are to make that decision. And then from there, let's just go with most common in your best interest is going to be an hourly rate versus a flat salary. Okay. So, and then with that, there's variables, right? You have a flat rate, plus you have an hourly rate plus bonus, which is the most popular. So when you're looking at just a flat rate, it's very simple to calculate and budget. But what I'm not crazy about is the injector will often lack motivation for performance and helping grow the business, right? It also can put a strain on your cash flow if the production is low. So I am not a fan of simply hourly flat rate by itself. I am a fan of the hourly rate plus the bonus. And that really is the most popular compensation model. So what that looks like is you will have a bonus with a floor, meaning the bonus doesn't activate until after you have achieved a specific revenue benchmark, right? And this helps to ensure costs are covered before the additional pay is given out. So this can be set per provider. It could be a group of providers. It could be the entire practice, right? Until that bonus kicks in. So again, there's lots of different ways to skin the cat here. And a good target would be 5 times their hourly rate, and then the bonus kicks in. That helps to cover your costs, right? To make sure that you are profitable. Now, if you have bonus without the floor, it's much easier to calculate, but you'll want to really make sure that you include non-revenue based factors to ensure compliance at the end of the day. So you want to make sure that you are staying compliant within your state. But guys, at the end of the day, really there's not this one size fit all for practices. I wish it was that simple when it comes to compensation, but our most recommended plan that really works the best that we see for the majority of aesthetic practices out there is really to pay injectors on a mixed compensation model. We find that really is the best scenario where you're creating this win-win environment, right? You're not overpaying, you're not underpaying. You are motivating for them to contribute to the growth of the business. You also are not having to have all these conversations about asking for a raise, because it's like, babe, give yourself a raise, right? Book more appointments so you can see more patients, so that you can make more recommendations with treatment plans and grow your revenue production that you are contributing to the business. And that's how you give yourself a raise. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Wouldn't it be nice that you would never have to have that conversation again? So what does a mixed model compensation plan look like? Right? Because it's more than just an hourly plus a bonus, right? There's different levers that you want to have in this, parameters that you want to set with it. So pretty straightforward, right? You want to have an hourly, right? That is enough that it covers their base income for stability, right? You want people to have a sense of security that even if they have a really rough, bad month, that they're not going to starve, right? That they're going to be able to pay their bills. And so you don't want to be so cheap and set this so low that you don't provide a sense of security for your employees. So keep that in mind. Now, then when it comes to the bonus, right? So the bonus is based on performance metrics. For example, it could be total revenue. It could be revenue per guest. It could be revenue per hour. It could include rebooking rates. Now, I'm not saying that you need to make this so difficult that you have, 5 or 6 different metrics that they have to meet in order for the bonus to kick in, because we want to keep them motivated. We want to really set them up for success, right? Because when people achieve their goals and hit their bonus, and they were like more, 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 right? And it becomes the norm. But at the same time, you want to have expectations of growth. You want to have minimum expectations, right? For that bonus to kick in. The next thing is you want to have KPIs, right? Key performance indicators that is going to help measure the target activity that we know needs to take place, that's going to ultimately drive performance, right? That's going to help you to get more patients, schedule more appointments, grow revenue at the end of the day. So for example, some of those KPIs could be collecting reviews, getting referrals, selling memberships, right? Cross promoting into other departments that they don't necessarily do the services for, are a few examples of KPIs that you could be tracking. You also want to include in the mixed compensation model rewards. Take credit for the product and services that you're giving them as part of their compensation plan, right? So I see some practices not be generous enough or utilizing the services and products that you're offering your patients. And I think that's not a good thing for multiple reasons. Like, one, you could utilize that value to show the great, mix of compensation and value that you're providing, in addition to the more products and services they use, the more they can speak passionately to patients to make those recommendations firsthand that they use these service and products themselves, right? So I strongly recommend that you are, generous without giving away the farm when it comes to allowing your employees to utilize the perks of getting treatments, but at the same time, it has to be with reason and within reason, right? Because there are a high consumable cost, right? In addition to that, you want to make sure that it's incentive based, right? That it's not a free for all, that you can earn more when you perform. Because how many employees do we know that even keep a day or two a week at your med spa or stay in the industry because they just want free services? So there's a lot of value in getting those services. So don't forget to include that in your compensation plan. The next one, and this is kind of a higher level one, is profit sharing. Now, this is something that I wouldn't offer right out of the gate, but could be more of a career advancement model once they hit more advanced milestones in your business. Because at the end of the day, if you have someone that started off just generating $25,000 or $50,000 a month in revenue, and all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but eventually they're responsible for 80, $100,000+ a month in revenue, you do not want to lose that employee where they're thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to go out and do this myself, right? And so that is a conversation where it might be important or necessary to build in a profit sharing model based on the revenue that they are producing, right? So again, I wouldn't lead with that, but these are strategies on how you can really retain top talent that are very high generators for your practice. Any questions so far, put them in the chat and I'd be happy to address those. So I'd like to share with you some really benefits around that mixed model that I think stand out compared to other models out there. And really, it's motivational at the end of the day when you have performance-driven compensation plans. Maybe that's just like the business person in me, because I have seen other practices where it's just salary and hourly, and that's it, and it's a kumbaya, and everyone tries their best kind of thing. I just don't see that happen very often, that they're willing to do the little things, right, that is really needed to increase revenue, rebooking rates, scheduling utilization, patient satisfaction at the end of the day. So, a mixed model is great for motivation and helping your employees have skin in the game. It also helps you to prevent having to have this, high hourly rate, right? Without any accountability. So if you have that mixed model, you again can give enough to give them a sense of security, but it's like, if you want to make more money, then you have to perform, right? So when they have that skin in the game and accountability, we find too that it really, helps for performance at the end of the day. And if you're a newer practice, it's even more important because you can't afford that high hourly rate. It's going to drain your cash flow. You're not going to be able to have a long enough runway to sustain that employee if you are paying this crazy high hourly rate right out of the get-go. So for particularly new or less busy practices, the mixed model is definitely a way to go. All right, guys. Any final questions before we wrap up here in regards to creating a compensation plan with your injectors? So some key takeaways is one, you got to know your numbers. Two, you got to know your market. And you also need to plan out a career advancement model for this employee, right? Because that means if you got to start with a low hourly rate, you got to show them how they're going to eventually get to making the money that they want and even more, right? And you need to utilize things like services, treatments, skincare, to help round out your compensation plan, right? Another thing that I hadn't talked about yet is training, right? Are they growth minded? Are you going to invest in their training? And if you do, then it's really important. In fact, I was just talking with Sarah Schickman from Lingia Law today about building in your compensation in your employment offer agreements, training clauses and what that reimbursement or working that off looks like to put you in the new employee in the best position to succeed. Because who hasn't hired an injector, invested all this time and money into them, and then they left, right? And then you got this sour taste and you're terrified. And so now you don't even want another injector and all the things. I've heard it before, right? But there is things that you can do to detour that type of behavior, right? Does it still happen every day? Yes, it does, unfortunately, but contractually, legally, there's some things that you can do to set you up for success to try to detour that behavior at the end of the day. Okay, Austin, best and not so best compensation plan you've heard of. Yeah, the best compensation plan, in my opinion, is that mixed model where you're doing an hourly plus a bonus, but you want to have a floor, right? The bonus kicks in after you meet a minimum threshold. I think, when it comes to retail, that should automatically be included no matter what. And then to make sure that you have perks like service and treatment perks included in your compensation plan, training, make sure that that's important as well. How do you determine that floor? Great question. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you back into determining the floor. So one is, are they coming, this brand new employee, or maybe it's an existing employee and you need to restructure their compensation model. The first thing that you need to do is, what kind of volume are you expecting them to do? And then you need to look at your marketing and how utilizing internal and external marketing to fill up their schedule. And then the employee's responsibility, what revenue generating activity they're going to be doing when they have gaps in their schedule, to get a baseline of what production should look like based on the clientele that you do have, what the next 3, 6, 12 months look like in projection, right? So that you can build that floor doesn't stay the same, right? You're going to have a level of expectations that they need to grow their book of business. So that's why you need to first get a baseline of what they're going to be walking into. Do you have patients ready to go to fill their schedule, or have they been with you for a while and you know their baseline, right? And then you know what are they meeting that 5x multiplier, or that 20% revenue to salary, right? Those are all great baselines to be looking at to see if you're way off one direction or the other. I hope that helped determine how you go about determining your floor. But again, guys, none of these are all steadfast rules, because in every single market that we go in, when we hire for an injector, we're telling the business owner that you got to look at licensing, right? Credentials, experience. Are they bringing a book of business with them? So, because just because someone has experience, right? Like, great, you're moving in from 3 states away and you have 10 years experience. Well, that 10 years experience is really great, but you're not bringing a single client with you. That's not as valuable as someone that has 3 years experience that's, coming to me from 2 miles down the road. You see what I'm saying? So, in addition to that, is she going to be doing, social media to promote her before and after pictures and the brand, right? Is she going to be responsible for additional things like mentoring within the practice, inventory, relationships with vendors, right? So there's a lot of variables that need to be looked at, considered, and clearly identified when it comes to building your compensation plan. And you need to talk with your reps, right? And what everyone in your market is paying, because if you aren't at least average, if not generous, you are not going to attract and retain top talent at the end of the day. It's just too competitive of a market. There is great opportunity, because there in a lot of the medical industry, and nurses particularly, that want to get into aesthetics, but they're terrified of leaving their high salary or hourly rate that is guaranteed, right? And I'm not saying that you should just throw money at unqualified, trained injectors, right? But that's where you want to take a look at core values and then set up a really strong training program, because one of our consultants, Abby, she is a strong believer that injectors can be made. They're not just found, right? In a perfect world, there is a line of experienced injectors that are ready to bring their clientele with them and join your practice. But the space is just too competitive, right? And so you have to have a really good, training, onboarding, compensation plan to attract people that share the same core values, work ethic, communication, vision, passion for the aesthetic industry. And you can turn that into, an injector that's generating you 50, 75, $100,000 a year in revenue. But it's going to take the right training, the right support, the right accountability, the right career advancement plan in order to do that. Kurt, okay, 5 times multiplier. Total hourly cost versus bringing in 5x the total hourly cost in that same time. Man, Kurt, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm following your question. Bringing in. If you want to send me a follow-up question. I'm not following. Is any of our consultants following that question that's on?
Am I able to speak?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I was just doing it through a chat. So are you saying that the 5 times multiplier is like, to hit the number is 5 times the amount we've paid them hourly? So if they work 20 hours and it's 50 an hour, then it would be the 5 times multiplier would be 5 times the amount of the hourly rate times hours worked?
Yeah. Yeah, like that's the floor. That's the bare minimum, like before a bonus would kick in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, got it. So if we end up paying them for 20 hours, but they've only brought in one customer and it's way below, then, then there's no bonus. So got
Yep.
it.
Yep. And then, part two of that is that's where, we really got to be training and holding our team accountable of what revenue generating activity they need to be doing to fill their book of business, right? Because when you pay that hourly rate, right, that's fine, it's great, but they're not making, no one's making money, right? The practice, the provider, unless they hit that bonus or that commission, right? And so sometimes it's not for a lack of desire. They just might not know how, because let's be honest, guys, when these injectors are go to college and they go to their Botox and filler training, they're not talking to them about really how to grow their book of business. They're talking to them about the didactics of how to inject and how to, um, do beautiful lips or facial rebalancing, right? They're not talking about the things that they should be doing when they have a gap in their schedule that's going to help increase their, rebooking rates, their average revenue per hour, the number of visits per year by their patients. And so that's really, phase two of once you set this compensation plan, you got to be training and teaching them and holding them accountable of how they're going to contribute to the growth of the business and the growth of their own income at the end of the day. Because your team, they want to do good for you, they want to do good for themselves, but sometimes they just need a little help pointed in the right direction of what that looks like. Because the reality is oftentimes if they knew how to do those things naturally themselves, they'd probably be their own business owner at the end of the day and not working for you. Make sense? So just to clarify, MJ's chiming in here. So that 5 times multiplier would be total overhead, right? So hourly wage plus consumable. So we can't forget about those consumables because you think about Botox and filler and the high consumable on that. So assuming that the required minimum threshold is hit, when you look at that 5 times rate is hourly, and then also the consumables, well, you got to factor in that consumable price.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks, MJ. All right, awesome, guys. I hope that you found this valuable. If you are looking to hire an injector, and maybe you lost someone, maybe you're adding a new service department, maybe you are looking to just light a fire under your current injectors, I strongly recommend that you reach out and schedule a call with a consultant to unpack that further of what potentially could be missing, right? Because it could be the compensation plan. It could be your consultation, your rebooking process. You could have the wrong team member in the wrong seat, right? There's a number of things that levers that could be pulled and looked at that's going to help you increase, revenue per hour, number of visits per year, so that your injector is really a profitable revenue generator for you, not just a gateway, right? I speak to practices every day, and it's one or the other. They either like, yeah, we do injectables, but I don't really want to focus on it because I don't really make any money off of it. It just helps me to get other, services busy. And you're missing something, right? If that's the case, because there is money to be made in injectables when done properly. So we would want to look under the hood and see what's going on with that if that's in the mindset that where you're at. So all right, guys, thanks so much for joining me here. If you found this training valuable, please make sure that you share it with your team, business partner, or another med spa that could benefit. And you can catch us live every single Wednesday, same time, same place. Catch us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Have a great day, guys. Bye.